Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we are going to talk about bending and not breaking. We're going to talk about the oak or the willow, which is a very old prophecy teaching, but we're going to kind of spin it a little bit and talk about how we kind of need to be both when we're talking about consciousness. And this is a topic that came up for me when I was doing something this morning and someone made this reference, and it kind of sparked a whole different concept and a twist in how I wanted to talk about it. So, the concept of the willow tree is it kind of bends and moves with the wind so it doesn't break. And the oak, of course, doesn't, and it breaks off. So which one are we supposed to be? When we talk about consciousness, we talk about being in flow and not so much as going with the flow. They're kind of two different things. Sometimes we go with the flow, even though it's not the flow we're supposed to go with. We're not supposed to go that way, but we don't want to upset everyone around us. So we kind of swing that way because we don't want the repercussions of what's going to come after that. We have obligation to that thing. We have obligation to that person, those people, that group, and we don't want to kind of rock the boat, so we'll kind of go that way, even though we know that's really not our flow. So what are we supposed to do? And then we have other times when we're kind of in this stance where our ego is like, I'm not going to move. And then we kind of get broken in a sense. We get broken down because our higher versions of us is going to say, no, you're going to move because you can't stay here. This is no longer your highest timeline. You have to now move to the other one. So you can't really do either. So sometimes we feel like we're not sure which one we're supposed to do. And I kind of touched on this in a video a couple of days ago, and I don't feel like I kind of got it to where I wanted to get it to at the end. I feel like it was still kind of mucky because of what I wanted to say. I couldn't get the words out. At least it didn't feel like I got the words out. So some days we are supposed to be the oak tree, and we're supposed to say, no, I'm not gonna go back to that. I'm not gonna go play in that stuff. I'm not gonna re-enter in or create a karmic timeline anymore. I'm gonna look at the energy I'm coming from. We have to stand as erect as that oak tree and say, no, I'm not gonna move. Now, how do you know the difference? And one of the ways I kind of semi-explained it before was we can get to these places where it's the story. We want to listen to the story we're telling ourselves. So when my higher self tells me something, and I say, I'm just going to kind of separate off in a sentence, because it's not like it's telling me something. It used to be kind of like that. But once you kind of merge everything in, it's not so much as telling you something anymore. You just kind of know what you have to do, right? You just kind of feel that. Like today, I'm usually do a stream. And I kind of didn't so much feel like doing it. I'm going through a clearing of some stuff. But there's still a part of me that's like, no, you have to do this. Because you said you have to do the stream today. But there was a part of me that kind of didn't want to do that. And then I got a message from my nephew who was like, oh, come play with me this afternoon. I want to go to the park. I want to go do something like that. And there was this part of me that's like, no, you have to work today. You have to do that stream. You can't, that's what you're supposed to do. So I was like, okay. So went outside, and it's funny because my nephew and I were talking about Texas the other day. And I walked outside, and right outside there's a receipt that had the word Texas on it. And I was like, okay, I get the hint. And then I was walking around the neighborhood, and I saw his name flash a couple of times in different things, First letter of his name on different people's doors and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I get the hint. I'm supposed to go here today. It's not linear. It's not logical. Because of what I'm clearing, there's this push for me to want to put up a stream today. But there's something else saying, no, that's not what you're supposed to do today. You have something else, but it's not a linear thing. So sometimes our ego kind of wants us to stand and do something. But there's a story. When I ever feel like I have to do something, I know that's the story. The ego's saying, you got to do this. Anytime there's a story, it's your ego telling you got to do it. Now, when it's my higher self trying to tell me to do something, it's more of a pressing. And normally, it's the ego telling me why I should not do that thing, right? So it's kind of the opposite. So you have to kind of go where the story is. So if something's saying, oh, no, don't do that because this is going to happen, Normally that means I have to do it. And if something's telling me, you know, no, you have to go do this right this minute, you don't have any time to waste. Because our higher aspects are not going to put that pressure. Nothing has to be done right now, unless we've sat on it long enough where the whole timeline collapses. So sometimes we have to kind of be able to move around in both. You know, we have to be able to kind of bend, like the willow's going to bend a little bit, and not be so rigid in what we have to do every day. But there are some parts when we have to be rigid because we have to say, I'm not doing this again. I'm not going through this timeline again. I'm not recreating the same shit I continuously create again because I have some emotion going on. Our soul is not fueled by emotion. It's not propelled by emotion. Humans are. Humans are fueled by emotion. They're driven by emotion. And once you start transcending that human consciousness, you are not fueled by emotions anymore. You're fueled by creation. What are you going to create today? What does it feel aligned for you to go do today? And sometimes when, you know, my nephew shows up, I know it's time to play. Today's a play day. And he'll just show up randomly, like on my doorstep some days. And it's because I'm supposed to play today. And I'm supposed to get into that energy today. And that's what's aligned. And all the other stuff goes to the side because this is more important. So kind of look at where you're being led. And if you have a resistance to it, then you have to kind of look at, why am I resisting going and doing this today? What is the story I have behind doing the other thing? Because also when I feel pushed to do something in that ego way, it's not coming from the right energy because there's a have to energy in that. There's a dread energy in that. I don't really have the energy to do this, but I feel obligated to do it. So we have to be able to kind of ride both sides of the fence. And sometimes sometimes going against the flow is being in flow for us. You know, we don't always go with the flow because that's not our inflow. And for a while, it's going to be completely opposite. And if you're in a certain part of this journey, different parts of the journey, it's always going to be different. Some parts of this journey, it's going to be, you know what? I'm not going to go back into that. We have to learn to say no a lot. We have to learn to say no to the old stuff repeatedly. And we're going to keep getting it back at us repeatedly because we have to prove to the higher aspects of us that we are not going to go back to that. I'm not going to be tempted by whatever this consciousness has to offer, because 3D is always going to be dangling something. It's some kind of carrot it's always going to promise you, but there's really nothing there. And we've been on those hamster wheels enough to where eventually we realize that. You know, I've always said that, you know, you kind of get to that place where you start shifting into higher states of consciousness. You get into seeker mode about that. You kind of get obsessed about your soul. You get obsessed about that type of information. It's that seeker phase of ascension, of awakening, and then an ascension where we just want more and more and more of it. You know, we want crystals, we want Andaras, we want to do tarot cards, whatever it was. We want to do Reiki. We want to get into our energy, our chakras. Whatever it is, even space, we want to get into space, you know, we want to look at all this stuff because it's kind of pulling us out little bit by little bit. But because we still have so much human DNA that has to be rewritten, it takes a long time to kind of extract all the way. So sometimes we feel like we kind of get pulled back, but there's going to be something that's you kind of get to that end of your human existence, and your human existence becomes like a past life in a sense of that term. You know, technically everything's going on at the same time, but how a human would say what a past life is, someone in their human consciousness and someone in a higher consciousness would look at that and go, well, my human life was my past life. Now I'm in a totally different reality where none of that technically never happened. So it all kind of shifts, but we kind of get to that place in our human existence where we either get exactly what we thought we always wanted, but we just don't get it, which that was mine. You know, I got exactly what I thought I wanted. I was almost there, and then the bottom fell out of the whole thing. And then it kept collapsing because nothing in our human realm we can really take with us because it's all tainted. It's all, the money can't come, normally the people can't come. I mean, they can transcend to a certain point, and then it kind of depends on the other person, how far they want to go and if their journey is going to line up with your journey. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. There's no kind of, our ego always tells that story that, oh, these people can't come with us, but we don't officially know that, you know, so don't kind of listen to that because you don't know that. You don't know who's going to come. And I'll tell you, by the time you get to those frequencies, if these people can't come with you, you're okay with it. because they're an old frequency that you've transcended and you don't have the ties to it anymore. You're okay if they can't come with you. And there are certain people that have not been able to kind of be on certain parts of the journey with me. And it was so tough for me, my human 4 or 5 years ago, to feel that. And I was so sad about that. And I had so much grieving to do about that because I didn't want to let these things go, these people go. And then you get to other parts of your journey. Once you transcend that frequency, the frequency they represented, the frequency of that, if they do have to go and they can't come, you're okay with it because you understand and you don't have the attachment anymore because that frequency is gone. The frequency that linked you is gone and it doesn't matter anymore. So you will get to that if they can't come. If you're still in that, a lot of people will talk about when you reach, full body ascension or when you reach this, when you reach that. Oh, before I forget, the other part is you get everything you want in your human reality and you're still not happy. So you see that kind of play out too. That's kind of the other flip of that, where you get it all, but you're still not happy. And that sends people, kind of on that awakening ascension path because they don't understand. They got everything they thought they'd always worked for and wanted, but they're still kind of not where they want to be. But you're going to find that as soon as that frequency, you transcend that frequency of what that relationship was, that either the relationship's going to have to shift, which some of mine have shifted. Some of people have just faded out because that's what they're supposed to do. Sorry, my nose is all of a sudden itching so much since I got on camera. So you're going to kind of see it both ways. You're going to kind of see some people will fall off. But I really have gotten to where I thought it would have been so, my human had this story about how hard that was going to be. But by the time you get to that place, it's not hard anymore because you don't have the attachment to all those things because that frequency bond is gone. You've transcended that frequency. You clean, in a sense, that part of your DNA. You don't feel that anymore. You don't feel that attachment anymore because you don't have the cords to it. It's kind of gone. It does kind of become a past life in a sense. You remember certain parts about your human life and you can bring them in to teach something, but it's not something that really stays with you, honestly. You can forget such large chunks of it that if someone asks me certain questions, I have to really think about it. I have to really think about, have I been to that state? Did I ever go there? Have I ever been there? Because it does feel like it's so far away. And even when it plays back, it doesn't play back almost like a memory. It almost starts to play back like someone else's memories, like you're watching a film or something. It doesn't feel the same, where you can have more ancient memories, remembrances, some people will call them, of different, even though it's all happening at the same time. I'm just going to separate it out for this in a sense today, but it all happens at the same time, but those feel more real. And some of the other stuff, it just doesn't, it just feels so far away from where you are because you're so removed from that frequency that it just feels like you're watching somebody else. You're watching someone else play out something on screen. And normally the people that were in that life with you probably don't remember it either. Because they're in it, even if they're still in their human consciousness, they're not going to remember certain parts because it's almost like you're kind of removed from it. It's almost like the kind of the Back to the Future. The Back to the Future where the kids were fading out of the picture. It's kind of similar to that. So even when if that timeline comes back around for some reason to clear something else, to mark some completion for you, because sometimes they'll come around to mark some type of completion for you, they might not remember it how you do. And they won't. So sometimes that can be like everyone's in a different dimension trying to remember, or they don't remember much at all. So that's when it's so important for us to kind of let go of so much of how we feel about things and just let all of that go and forget it all, because it doesn't matter. No one gives a shit. Truly. No, the only person that's holding on is us. And if we still give a shit, then we're going to invoke that in other people. But if we don't give a shit, nobody cares. So, takes the edge off. All right, keep practicing the art of intuition.